I just been telling you what I heard. That's all.
Okay. And let's presume that you heard nothing about any racist motives, any racial overtones from this courtroom. Would you leave that thing that the media said about maybe this, why you would want to be a juror? Tell me. So, why would you want to be a juror at all?
I guess it's a service paying back to my adopted country, I would say.
Okay.
You know,
You know, of course, that
it's part of being a citizenship. The right.
Okay. Any other reason besides that?
I guess because all we deserve something like this if something happened to us. I guess.
Okay. I'm not saying that there should be other reasons. I think that's the
No.
best and most noblest. I'm just
Okay.
curious if you had any other reasons or purposes for it. Okay. I might just have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes, you may.
We've talked about what you've learned from the media, and you've also asked about friends. Do you go to church?
Yes.
Okay. Has this ever been discussed, this case, in your church?
No.
Any sermons about it or any conversations you've had with other parishioners?
I'm a Catholic,
Right.
but I'm not like.
In those times that you do go to church, do you recall any times where it has been discussed or talked?
Basically, it was something very hard when they do the prayers.
Keep the talked about. Do you have any belief already that it was Trayvon Martin who did something wrong? When I say Trayvon Martin, he was the person who passed away. You know that name?
All I know that there's somebody got shot. And that's
Okay. Do you have any notion that the person who got shot did anything wrong? As you sit here today.
I don't get that clear. Yeah, that's
Okay.
why I'm.
Do you have any notion or belief that, as you sit here today, that George Zimmerman has done anything wrong?
Same thing, I need to see what happened, or any
Okay.
evidence. And
Thank you. Nothing
Listen.
further on.
Thank you. Just stay seated. Would council's ready approach?
G14.
Please be seated. Good afternoon. You are being referred to as juror G14, and the attorneys are going to have an opportunity to ask you questions about the juror questionnaire that you filled out Tuesday morning. And we're going to begin with Mr. De La Ronda.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Hi.
I'm going to refer to you as ma'am or G14 if I may. We've had an opportunity to read over your the questionnaire that you filled out in terms of what knowledge you had, so I'm going to explore that a little bit more if I could.
Okay.
You've got here that Mr. Zimmerman was performing a citizen's watch for a community and saw Mr. Martin walking through the community. It seemed suspicious to him, so he called the police, who told him not to follow Mr. Martin. But he did anyway. The two men got into some type of altercation, and Mr. Martin was shot and killed by Mr. Zimmerman.
Yes.
Okay. That information that you described here in that questionnaire, was that based on TV or newspaper or a combination?
TV,
Okay. And do you recall whether it was local TV or national TV?
local,
Do you recall what channel by chance? What
News
station?
13.
13? Do you recall that information that you described, whether you obtained or back in February when this happened, or right after, or more recently, or in the middle somewhere?
When I obtained that?
Yeah, when you heard this or came to this evidence, when this
It
evidence
was
came?
rather soon after it happened.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it would have been close to the time if this happened February 26th of
Mhm.
2000, so it was close to that time?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you keep up with the case after that?
Not on a daily basis, no. I recall hearing things as new news came about. I would hear things, but
And did you read it at all in the newspaper?
no.
Okay. Did you do any searches on internet to learn about the case at all?
No.
Do you, are you involved in Facebook or any of that other stuff?
No.
You don't partake in social
No.
media at all? Okay.
Not really.
All right. Now, so your focus mainly in terms of being exposed to this case was through the TV?
Yes.
Okay. And you mentioned at the beginning, and then as it came periodically, you would just by glancing on it, or I guess what I'm trying to ask, maybe inartfully, let me rephrase the question. You know, there are people who watch the news on a regular basis almost every night, and they're like, they have to watch the news and they got to keep up, not just this case, anything that's going on.
Right.
And then there's others that just periodically, while they're eating dinner or something, just turn on the TV and see what's on.
Right.
Which of the two, if
Well, and let me say that even though I didn't, I don't search out anything, or I didn't search out anything about this case on the internet, but I have the internet on when I'm at work.
Sure.
And so I would periodically check over onto the News 13 website,
Sure.
and I would see like something new had developed in the case,
got you.
or I would, so really, you know, in terms of watching it, watching the news on a nightly basis, no, I don't do that. Just during the day, I kind of switch over,
Sure.
check on the website and see if there's any, you know, breaking news or
Right.
weather alerts or
Sure.
anything like that.
So when you checked when you were at work, it wasn't just on this case, it was just to see what's new and happening in
Right.
town or happening nationally?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Some people have followed this case, others have not. Were you one of those individuals that kind of followed the case to see what was going on in court?
I really didn't.
Okay. That's good, or there's not good or bad answer other than what you did.
Like
I
not being up
apologize
with the
for not
news,
doing
but
it. Okay. Did you pay attention to any of the court proceedings themselves? Like, you know, sometimes they televise them live or whatever they did.
the only ones I really recall were the ones here recently, knowing that I was going to be up here on June 10th. The week before or so, there were some about delaying the trial or
Sure.
motions to delay the trial. Those are the only ones I kind of
All right.
heard.
And that was going to be some of my follow-up questions. Sometimes when people get that summons, they become more attentive because by chance they may be on that, potentially on that jury that is involved.
Right.
Was that what you did, kind of?
No, really, the only thing that I did, I had heard, I think on the radio, that the Seminole County had sent out the summons for this trial, and A week later, I got a summons in the mail, and so I went to I don't even know where I searched now, but I
Sure.
just went to check what trials were coming, because they had said that it could be any number of trials.
Sure.
So I just wanted to check and see what trials were coming up on June 10th, but that's all I checked.
Okay. Did you ever go like on YouTube to see what there was about the case at all, or any kind of that stuff? What do you recall, and other than what you've written here, do you recall looking at any photographs through TV in terms of them putting any photographs regarding any aspect of the case?
I remember them, photos of Mr. Zimmerman. There were, I guess, of whether he had been physically hurt. There were
Okay.
pictures of that.
What do you remember, what photos of it? What do you remember about the photos?
I remember them bringing him into the police station and showing pictures of the back of his head and the top of his head. I don't know if those were pictures that were taken of him or pictures that were made in the courthouse, like
Sure.
recordings, or not the courthouse, the police.
Okay,
But that's basically.
all right. Any other pictures that you recall related to the case, any other aspect of the case?
I remember seeing lots of pictures of Mr. Martin in a hoodie.
Okay.
Um,
Did you form any opinions or impressions as a result of those photographs, either of Mr. Zimmerman or Mr. Martin?
no.
Okay. The photos that you described already, would those have been closer in time to February than as to recently?
In February, yeah.
Do you recall any recent photographs that you may have seen? And I'm not saying that there were, I'm saying, did you see anything recent?
No, the only thing recently I've seen is when during the day I would look over on News 13 and I would see still shots of him being in the courtroom, Mr. Zimmerman in the
Okay,
courtroom.
all right. Do you recall any other aspect of the case that's related to the case, but weren't specifically facts about what happened that day? the
That
shooting?
were not facts.
Right, right. In other words, opinions of people talking about the case.
I recall that there was a lot of anger, a lot of people upset about the fact that Mr. Zimmerman was not arrested immediately.
Sure.
And then it seems to me there were it's just bad that I don't remember, but people who came from out of town and got involved in the case, or got involved in the discussion of the case, not
Sure.
necessarily in the case, but.
Okay. What did you feel about that? What did you think about that?
It just felt like it wasn't really known what had happened, and to try to create a sense of what really happened when they didn't know what really happened was not really helping the matter.
Did you feel that those people that were from out of town, et cetera, that they were kind of creating some of the problem?
Yes.
Okay.
And-
I don't want to put words in, I'm just trying to.
Right, I mean, it's not so much creating a problem, but they were creating a discussion that really was kind of not necessarily the discussion that needed to be had.
Do you feel that aspect of it would interfere in any way in you being able to arrive at a decision in this way?
No.
In other words, did you feel those people that were out of town and were having a discussion about that, did you think those people were favorable to Mr. Zimmerman or favorable to Trayvon Martin?
I felt that they were favorable to Mr. Martin.
Okay. Would you hold that against the state since we're prosecuting George Zimmerman? And anything else that you can remember about the case? Let me prod your mind if I could here.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember any proceedings in court dealing anything, or do you remember any recordings at all about the case at all? Anything? And I am not saying that there were, but I'm just saying sometimes there's recordings and things.
Well, when you say recordings, it seems like there was a, I guess, Mr. Zimmerman's call to the police,
Okay.
that was on the news.
Right, yeah, you've got that notated here in your
Okay.
thing. Do you remember anything about that call itself?
I remember that, according to the news, well, I want to say according to the news, but it may have actually been on the recording that he was told not to follow the young man.
Now, anything else you can remember about any other recordings at all that arose from the case, if they did? Okay, and I'm not saying that they did, I'm just trying to prod your memory as to
Yeah.
what you remember, because sometimes people remember things that really didn't happen.
Right.
Or weren't even in the media, that's why I'm asking you. Now, all these things that you remember so far about the media, the question is whether you can disregard that and base your decision only on what happens in the courtroom. Do you feel you can?
I do.
Okay. And in other words, if you were to pick as a juror and you listen to the evidence, and some of the stuff that you've already mentioned wasn't true or did not come out at all, can you disregard that? In other words, obviously it's in your mind, it's in your memory. still,
Some of the
but
stuff that I've said was not true? Or
if it
no?
was, I'm not
Oh,
saying it
okay.
was or it wasn't true. I'm just
Okay.
saying if it turns out that it was not true, can you agree to disregard that?
Yes,
Okay. In other words, can you base your decision only on the instructions that the court will give you the law, and then also whatever witnesses say or whatever evidence is presented?
yes, I really do believe that I can, because I think, I would not be happy to learn that what I have in my mind is not accurate fact, because that would be that I'm remembering things that have been put in my mind or that I've
Right.
assumed.
Right. And do you agree that assumptions, do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
Assumptions that I have?
No, assumptions that anybody has. Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
Assumptions that people have about
Yeah.
a case that,
Right.
no, that's
Okay.
not a good thing.
Okay. In other words, you agree that assumptions should not play a role in you arriving at a verdict, in other words?
No,
You have to
no.
have concrete evidence or facts.
Yes, sir, that's what the trial is for.
Now, in terms of anything else you can remember about the case?
Not right off the top of my
Okay.
head.
All right. You take a break? Wait a second.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. Did you talk to anybody about the case, either at work or family or other friends somewhere else?
Within the past year or so?
Yeah, since
or-
it happened, did you talk to people about the case?
I think that I probably did. I don't recall specific conversations, but I think that, at the time that it happened, it was on all the news and all
Sure.
the radios, and, it was a subject of conversation in
Sure.
terms of what people believed really did happen.
Okay.
I did never have an opinion about it one way or the other, because I heard both sides saying that, it was what Mr. Zimmerman did, and that Mr. Martin was there in the community, and that he was there in the community, and so really, I just knew what I heard.
Right. Now, when people talk to you about the case, did they express their opinions either in favor of what Mr. Zimmerman did or in favor of Mr. Martin's, the fact that he shouldn't have been killed, that kind of stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have both sides represented in these opinions or these discussions?
Honestly, I think that most of the people that I had conversations with about, or just, passing comments about, were kind of like me in that we really didn't take one side or the other. We just were talking about, well, here's what they said happened, well, here's what also they said happened, and so is saying this,
Sure.
and so is saying that.
Now, some people believe that the media just reports facts or, what happened. And then some people believe that media reports facts, but they kind of interject their spin or their bias. Which do you believe in, that the media sometimes is biased or opinionated or slanted in some way about the way they report things?
Well, I think that some media are. There are, in my opinion, some national media outlets are very biased in their opinion and how they report.
Sure.
The local media, I don't think that everybody is human and has a bias.
Sure.
You know, they all give a report in a tone that whatever they're thinking of it. They may present information that, you know, because it's all edited, so they'll
Sure.
present information in the way that they want it presented. But in terms of the local media, I don't necessarily believe that any of them are intending to
Sure.
present a biased opinion.
And thank you for or explaining your thoughts on that. Did you feel that the media that you saw in this case, in terms of the TV, did you think that was biased one way or the other? Maybe unintentionally, did you think they were favorable more to Trayvon Martin or favorable more to George Zimmerman, or, you know, and maybe at different times they were favorable one side or the other? What's your take on all that, I guess is what I'm trying to ask you.
I don't really feel like I caught any hint of bias. I do feel like at certain times there were more stories about one party or the other when there was, you know, all the people that were upset about his not being arrested. Then there seemed to be a lot of stories about Mr. Martin. And then in the past couple of weeks to 6 months, a lot of it has been about Mr. Zimmerman. So I don't think that the stories themselves or the presentations were slanted as much as it was just more about this or more about that.
As the process evolved in terms of just from the media aspects, in terms of slanting one way or not slanting, at least giving one side and then giving the other, did you feel like you were maybe in a tennis match where, you know, you went one way one day and then the other day you would go the other way? Did your impressions kind of go from one side to the other? Were you kind of like a tennis match where you're going like?
You know, it really did, and I think that's why I never formed an opinion about the case, because it's like I would hear one side and go, oh, that's horrible, and then I would hear the other side and go, well, you know, maybe this is what happened. So, yeah, but I don't know that it was necessary. Well, you know, I may be being naive, but I don't feel like I was being led by the stories presented as much as I was just like hearing something that maybe I hadn't heard before.
And by my questions, I didn't mean to imply
No,
that it was.
no.
I'm just trying to get from you whether you felt it was. I'm not trying to imply it one way or the other. Because what's important is what you remember, not what I asked you. So, but anytime you can clarify something by what I'm asking you, please feel free to do so.
Okay.
You mentioned national news, and I apologize if I already asked you, that you did not look at the national news on purpose. Is that on purpose, or you just don't?
I don't really follow it that much
Okay.
because it's just.
And when I say national news, I'm talking about this particular case in terms of whether.
Right, no, I did not follow it nationally in this particular case.
Okay. Anything else in terms of related to the case that comes to mind right now? If I were to ask you, George Zimmerman or Trayvon Martin, anything else that comes to mind other than what we've talked already about?
No?
Okay. Your belief is that as the information was, you know, developing in terms of you from the media, you were keeping an open mind throughout, or you were not swayed one way or the other? Even if there were first impressions, even if they were not lasting. You know, sometimes we see something and then we form an impression, and then the next day we go, oh, okay, hold on, that was the wrong impression. Did any of that occur as the media, as you were being informed of the case or the supposedly facts from the media?
Did I form an opinion?
Yeah, as you go.
However
Or
fleeting.
impressions. Yeah.
I don't think anything strong enough to recall, no.
Okay.
Because I just really, you know, I knew it had happened, and like I said, I would see it on the news occasionally. I really didn't stop to listen how it was progressing. I would catch every once in a while that it was progressing.
Sure.
I knew that it was going to trial, but no, I don't think that I don't know that, and I know you say this is nothing wrong, but I don't know that I necessarily gave it that much thought.
Okay. And the reason I ask, and please, when I'm asking, just make sure we don't talk about in terms of where you work, but I can tell where you work based on what you put here, and I can tell by your background in terms of your education, in terms of the field you were at, that you might be interested in terms of what the news. Is that not true, or?
I'm not sure I understand.
Your background in terms of communications,
Uh-huh.
don't tell me anything about where you work. You
Okay.
understand? Was your field related to the media itself?
No.
Okay, and I just going on what you put down here, that's why I
No.
asked. Because sometimes people with those degrees are critical of the media, or you don't have any of that?
No.
Okay. We've talked extensively, hopefully, about what you know. Is there any doubt in your mind in terms of whether your perception or consideration of the actual evidence and testimony might be affected by what exposure you've had from the media?
I do not think that there would be, I don't think that there's a perception to be altered one way or the other.
Okay. And the other questions I wanted to ask you were related to we're going to pick a jury at some point. Can't tell you exactly when because we're going through the process now, but at some point a jury will be picked.
Mhm.
And if you were picked on that jury, then we expect the trial to be anywhere from 2, maybe up to 4 weeks.
Okay.
The jury will be sequestered, which means, that they will be housed together and have limited contact with the outside world on purpose so that there's no influence from, media or that aspect of it.
Okay.
Would that present a problem at all? And I know you already noted no, but I just want to make sure that you're clear about that. Everything is an inconvenience in terms of having
Sure.
to take time off. The question is whether it would be an insurmountable hardship to you.
It would not be an insurmountable hardship, no.
If I may have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes, you may.
Very much, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. West? You need to change papers? Okay. Okay, we're ready.
We can't start without Linda. I won't be as long, but there are a couple of things that I would like to talk with you about. My name is Don West. I'm one of the attorneys for Mr. Zimmerman, and Mark O'Meara's here to my left. I suppose if you've watched Channel 13, you've seen Mr. O'Meara for sure.
Mhm.
Let's talk about that for just a moment.
Okay.
It sounds like that when you get a few minutes or a break in what you're regularly doing at work, you can grab a peek at what's scrolling across the screen.
Yes.
If you are interested in a particular story, can you stop your work and watch it for the rest of the day?
No.
Take a peek and move on to what you were doing?
Right.
Okay. In that sense, would you get bits and pieces of information about this case as about any other case that, you know what I'm getting at?
It's really, I have a computer at my desk and I'm doing other things, and on my internet is open to like 3 different things. And so every once in a while I'll click on the tab that is News 13 and I'll just, I'll glance at what the headline is. It might be this case that's the headline. It might be a fire going on, a traffic accident, or some kind of national news. And
Sure.
if it's of interest to me, or if I have the time, then I'll click on it and maybe read it. I don't watch anything that's like a video. video. I just, anything that can be read. But I don't watch any of the video that's there.
Work daytime hours?
I do.
Do you have an opportunity to see any of the court proceedings in the last few weeks?
Just, I've seen them on the TVs, or anything like that.
Are you aware of any case-related issues that are currently being considered by the court as a result of watching TV in the last 2 or 3 weeks?
Of this case, the
Right.
last that I heard, because we've been instructed not to listen to
Of course.
anything, was the motions before the trial started asking for a delay in the trial.
Okay.
That's the last I recall.
All right, that's the last issue related to the case that you remember being part of a court proceeding?
It seems like there were 2 of them, but that's the only one I recall.
Sure.
That there were 2 issues before the, two motions, but that was the only one I recall.
You mentioned, I think, and that's why I was following up, that you may have seen some pictures from the courtroom, maybe even still pictures, in the last 2 or 3 weeks.
A picture on the front of the website, and you know, it would say, I know it would say like what why you were in court, but I don't recall what any of them said.
Okay. There was a comment made that I wanted just some clarification on, about an issue that you became aware of, at least in the media, was that Mr. Zimmerman was not arrested right away. Were you following that issue as it was unfolding?
As it was unfolding, and thinking back on it now, I didn't realize that he hadn't been, I mean, I did know that he wasn't arrested that night, and then that there were people upset. Who exactly, I don't recall, was upset, but I remember that there was, in the city of Sanford, quite an uproar about him not being arrested that night. And then
Was there had been a delay? Did that affect your view of the case or any of the participants in the case?
no.
Do you hold anyone at fault for there being a delay, or that in fact he was later arrested?
No, I guess I just assumed that there was a reason that he wasn't, and I don't recall really. You know, I heard about the shooting, and then I heard about the unrest, and then I think the police captain resigned or was fired or something. Now, whether he was arrested before then or after, I don't recall.
Did you draw any inference or form any opinion about the quality of the investigation as a result of some of these in the arrest, some community response, and then ultimately being an arrest that, of course, eventually leads us here? In any way, in your mind, might impact on Mr. Zimmerman's presumption of innocence?
No.
Have you in any way formed an opinion, and I don't mean one necessarily that you hold firmly,
Right.
but just an opinion based upon what you've been exposed to in the media about his guilt or innocence?
My opinion, because I've thought about this the last couple of days.
Sure.
There seems to have been an admission that he did shoot Mr. Martin. Why he shot him and what exactly happened, I really can't form an opinion about. I just don't, you know, there's been two sides presented as to what actually happened, and I don't honestly know.
You haven't picked a side.
I have not, because I don't know. It's,
Do you think that you would be able to, well, the term is set aside. That doesn't help a whole lot, but or disregard. But the idea is whether you've been impressed by any of the information from one side or another that would make it more difficult for you to base your decision as a juror only on what you hear in the courtroom.
I do not think that I have, I know that I do not have an opinion one way or the other that I would have to set aside.
Okay.
Because I really, honestly, it's a terrible situation that is bad for both parties.
I promise I'm just about done, but on that aspect, what caught my attention on the questionnaire, as you were asked, in a sense, to summarize the events. And I don't know whether, when you summarized on the questionnaire, whether you were summarizing really what you had heard as much as what you believe happened. You follow the distinction I'm making?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what caught my attention is that you indicate that the police told Mr. Zimmerman not to follow Mr. Martin, but he did anyway. Is that something that you heard? Is that something that you believe? Is that something that you are sure is what the evidence is in the case?
I am not sure that that's what the evidence is. I feel like that's what I heard. In terms of belief, I don't know, you know, it's not like a faith, but I believe that's what I heard.
Okay.
So-
Now, I'm not going to argue with that. You
Okay.
probably did hear that.
Okay.
No one's challenging that that sort of thing has been said. The question is, though, how would that have affected you as you sit here, possibly in judgment of Mr. Zimmerman? Do you think that's in fact what happened?
I honestly don't know. I mean, that's what I'm saying, is that that's what I believe that I heard, that
Of course.
he was asked, that he called in to the police, I believe, and said that he saw this young man and felt it was suspicious. And then what I thought I heard was that he was asked not to follow him, that the police, I guess, were coming.
Okay,
But-
fair enough. Then you also say here, though, but he did anyway.
Yes,
So-
that's what I heard, that he
Mhm,
did anyway.
Correct. So have you been sort of struck by that? Has that in any way shaped your view of the case so that, and here's the rest of the question, if the evidence were different in the courtroom, that you would have this lingering problem, hey, I heard that he was asked not to follow him and he did anyway, if the evidence was in fact not supportive of that?
If the evidence was not in support of that, no, I would not hold to that. I don't desire to hold to anything that is not accurate. You know, I understand that I could have heard things, because I don't honestly recall where I heard or how I heard. It could have been somebody telling me that, it could have been something on the news. It could have just not be true, but I don't want to believe, I don't want to hold false thoughts in my head. So no, I don't believe that, you know, when evidence is presented to me and clearly that did not happen, for instance, I don't know if it did or not now, but if that did not happen, then no, I would not hold to that.
Yes. I get it. Thank you. One minute, please. If I understand what you're saying, you're not sure that you necessarily heard it the way I described it. George Zimmerman was told not to follow Mr. Martin, and he did anyway.
Correct.
Is it possible, perhaps, assuming that you did in fact hear it that way, that the media might have gotten it wrong?
I suppose, again, I don't actually recall where I heard that. I mean, I would assume that, well,
Are you assuming that to be a fact in the case? That that's what happened, that Mr.
I'm not
Zimmerman-
assuming that to be a fact as much as I'm assuming that's what I heard. That's
Gotcha.
what my recollection is,
Absolutely,
so.
and that's why this is so challenging
Yeah.
to sort out not just what you've heard, but how that may have affected you. And then whether it's had any effect that you can't help but bring into the courtroom
Sure.
with you. And are you comfortable, and can you assure us?
I do feel comfortable in that, because I don't, I honestly have not followed it close enough to know, and it's been long enough ago that I don't actually recall. I just like know what's in my head, and where that came from, now I'm starting to wonder. So I would definitely, whoever is on the jury hopefully will understand that what is being said is what is
That that's what they
pertinent.
should, and the only
Yes.
thing they should consider. Sure, that's exactly right.
right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. If you'll still remain seated, and when the attorneys are ready, please approach. I doing that again?